स्यादौ कुर्वन् गीतामृतं ददौ लोकत्रयोपकाराय तस्मै कृष्णात्मने नमः. Hare Krishna. Welcome back to the Bhagavad Gita. We are continuing with the discussion of the second chapter. We'll continue with 2.29. So we discussed 2.28, where we discussed about how death is inevitable, therefore one should do one's duty. Krishna concludes the description of the soul here in this verse, in the next verse. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidenam, Ascharyavat vadati tathaiva chanya, Ascharyavat chainamanya shrunoti, Shrutvapi enam vedana chaiva kaschid. So Ascharyavat. So here basically we see the word Ascharyavat being repeated 3 times in the first 3 lines. And it talks about progressive levels of understanding. So some people see the soul as amazing. Some people hear the soul as amazing. Pashyati, that is see. Vadati, some people see the soul as amazing. Some people talk about the soul as amazing. Some people hear about the soul as amazing. And some people hear and still don't understand. And there is no Vascharya implied over there. But here this, they also reject it as amazing. That can come by continuation of the thought. So what exactly is Krishna talking about over here? Some people see the soul as amazing. That means with enlightened vision, if we see, Prabhupada writes in the purport that this soul is Keshagrashata Bhagasya Chatadha Kalpitasya cha. It is just 1/10,000 the tip of a hair, so tiny. And that tiny soul is animating the body of a giant whale or a massive elephant or a huge sequoia tree. And one soul is animating the whole giant body. And that same soul is also animating, not exactly the same soul, but a soul of a similar nature is animating entirely different, something which is very tiny, very microscopic. What is that? That is the germs which are there, and there may be millions of germs in just a small cross section of space, especially if that cross section is useful or is suitable, conducive for the generation and the propagation of life. So in this case, what this indicates essentially is that the soul can animate something so small and soul can animate something so giant. How is this? So those who see this, they perceive the soul to be amazing. So now if you see, if you sometimes we can see people are so different. You know, some person may be a very aggressive, masculine person. Some other person may be very timid and feminine. And both of them, their souls are more or less similar. The soul essentially is actually of the same nature, although they are of course individuals, but there is so much variety. So it's amazing, all the souls of Satchidananda, but still their potencies, their inclinations, they're so different. This is amazing. Actually speaking, we all long for eternal life and we try to eternalize our present life, but that is impossible. None of us can do that because life in this world is always temporary. We struggle and struggle, but when we understand that actually I am already eternal, I just have to realize my eternal nature, then we understand this is remarkable. It's amazing. The soul has the nature of Sat Chitananda. So we try to get this thing to be happy, that thing to be happy, that thing to become happy. But then we understand that actually soul by nature is only happy. All that I have to do is realize my nature and then joyfulness will automatically manifest. That also is amazing. How does this happen? So in this way, if we think about it, soul is truly amazing. Soul is truly amazing. And Ascharyavat. So those who are in knowledge and they perceive. So what does seeing mean? Actually, when our spiritual vision is awakened, at that time each of us will be able to perceive the soul directly. So just as we are seeing each other, we'll be able to see the soul. So those who are at that level of realization, They see the soul and they say, it's amazing how this eternal soul who's a part and parcel of Krishna can come under illusion, and then such a soul can become a ruthless terrorist who has no conscience while blowing up thousands of people. How can such perversion happen? Oh, that is amazing. So, Ascharyavat Pashyati Kaschidinam, Ascharyavat Vadithai Chanya. Some people, when they understand, so they speak about it. Oh, the soul is so amazing. So, at one level is perception, which can be spiritual perception or it can also be intellectual understanding. Then Ascharyavat Vadithai Chanya. Then they start speaking, and when they speak about it, they understand more and more how the soul is wonderful, how the soul is amazing. Ashcharya Vishnu Tichanya. Some other people hear about the soul and they think, oh, I never knew this. I never knew that actually I was eternal. I thought that I was temporary and I was going to die. But now that I understand I'm eternal, this is amazing. So this knowledge itself is also amazing. How is it that I am eternal? So in this way, and there are some other people who is, how is it possible? When the body feels pain, when the body is hurt, I feel pain. When the body is hungry, I feel hungry. When the body dies, I die. Just can't digest. How can there be a soul? So they just can't understand that there is something beyond the soul. One of our devotees was once giving a class in a country where there was no, people had no knowledge about the soul. So he told, you are not your body. And one person said, sir, I have a question. Then whose body am I? So that means the person is so much locked in bodily conception that I am my body. So if I am not my body, then whose body am I? So people just can't come out of their bodily conception. And even when Srila Prabhupada was preaching in America in the early days, when Srila Prabhupada said, I am not my body. So many of the devotees coming there, many of the people coming there, some of them became devotees later, they thought that Swamiji is speaking that he is not his body, but we are our body. So he's a special person, so he is not his body, but we are our body. So actually, people who can't understand this and go through the whole life blundering through their journey, thinking that I am the body, that is also disastrous. Those people are also amazing. Now, how can one just can't comprehend the soul? So now, our Acharyas explained that this verse can be understood differently, and Ascharyavat can apply. Till now we have discussed Ascharyavat, that the soul is amazing. So in English there is this figure of speech called as transferred epithet. Transferred epithet means that when an adjective is at one place, the adjective can be put in another place for poetic purposes. And the traveler goes on the weary road. So now weary means tired. Now the road is not tired. It is the traveler that is tired. But in the case of poetic ornamentation, the person, the epithet may be transferred. That's called transferred epithet. And it adds beauty. So like that, Ascharyavat can apply, it can apply either to the soul, till now that's how we have been analyzing it. But Ascharyavat can also apply to people. Those who are the seers, or those who are the speakers, those who are the hearers, and those who are the deluded who can't comprehend it at all. So if we apply it that way, then what happens? So that means some amazing people see the soul. So actually speaking, to get direct spiritual perception, that's extraordinary. So people who are able to see the soul, they're amazing. Some amazing people see the soul. And those are the exalted, advanced spiritualists. Their spiritual vision is awakened, and they are at the stage of Turya, at the stage of spiritual consciousness. Our consciousness has four stages. There is Jagruti, which all of us are in now. Then there is Swapna, when we sleep. Then there is Sushupti, with a deep sleep. And there is Sushupti is deep dreamless sleep. And then there is samadhi or turiya. So those who attain the state of samadhi, their consciousness, they can perceive. So those people are who can perceive such spiritual reality. They are extraordinary. So they are amazing. Then in the second line, some amazing people speak about the soul. So actually speaking, there is Atmagyan, which is so rare. The knowledge of the soul is so rare. And the people who talk about the spiritual conception of life who tell, you're not the body, we're the soul. We have to do this, we have to do that, we have to do this, we have to do that. Those people are amazing. How? How can they do such a thing? How can they speak about such things? That's because they are very special. So they may not be pure devotees, they may not be entirely realized spiritualists. But if you consider the number of people who are actually sharing the wisdom of Krishna, which centers on the soul and the soul's relationship with Krishna, they are so rare. So such people are also amazing. In this material world, the number of people who are sharing Krishna consciousness are so tiny. And then some amazing people hear about it. So now actually speaking, every person who comes to know, inquire about Krishna, that person is so rare, so precious. It's so extraordinary. There are so few people who actually know about the soul, who actually come to hear about the soul. Later on in 7.3 we will discuss in the Bhagavad Gita how Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschil Yatati Siddhaye. Out of thousands of people, few inquire about spiritual reality. So it's rare. So some amazing people inquire about the soul. So actually when we are doing our outreach programs and we see people coming to the temples, to the programs, to take the books, every one of them is a special person. And they are rare, one among thousands. And then those who can't understand, even after hearing, they are also amazing. This amazing is more in a sad, regretful, sarcastic sort of sense. Not sarcastic in a looking down, but sad sense. The word Ashcharya is used in also the famous Mahabharata verse, where it says Ahanya Hanya Bhutani Pashyanti Hayamalayam Shesha Sthavaramicchanti Kimascharyamatah Param. So in the Yudhishthir Yaksha Samvad, actually Yudhishthir tells Yaksha, please ask your questions. Then if you answer the questions, then you can revive my brothers. It's a long story in the Mahabharata. The brothers have drunk the water, and that water has poisoned them. So on the bank of the lake of death, this person asked, that's actually Dharma, it's Yamaraj, but he appears to be like Yaksha at that time, the father of Yudhishthira, Dharma. So there's this conversation that is going on. So at that time, he's asked, what is the most amazing thing in the world? So Yudhishthira Maharaj says that the most amazing thing is that every day thousands of people die. Yet the remaining people think that we will be happy here, we will be secure here. So this is amazing. So now this amazing is used in the sense of amazingly stupid. So tragically stupid. How can people be so foolish? Amazingly stupid. Just like in the movie, sometimes the hero is running towards the villain, and the villain has got several people around with him, and they're all shooting bullets. And the bullets hit everywhere except the hero, and the hero just runs on, and comes and bashes the villain. So now we know this is all make believe. Things don't happen like this. But we see the bullets of death all around us. Tuck, 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 tuck. People are knocked down by the bullets of death. But we think, oh, I will not be knocked down. Somehow I will be the lucky one who will accept. Like, who will be an exception, who will escape. So we have to take exception to our hope for an exception. Our hope for an exception, that we will be the lucky person who will be an exception. We have to take exception. That is a useless hope. Take exception to the hope for an exception. So people who do not do this, they are amazing. How can somebody be so terribly obtuse, so dumb, so unthinking? One just didn't think about that. Now most people, if they are asked, you know that you're going to die? Yes, I know I'm going to die. But actually when they admit it, there is a hollowness to that admission. One doesn't accept it in one's heart. Yes, okay, it may happen, but it's as if when we say I'm going to die, you're talking about somebody else. Somebody else is going to die, or I am going to die in the future, so after so long that I don't have to bother about it right now. Those people are also amazing. And so now this Ashcharyavad as an adjective can be transposed and also applied to the doing, to the action. So in a sentence there are three parts. There is the subject, there is the predicate, and in the predicate there is the connecting verb and there is the object. So for example, say I see you. So I am the doer, I am the subject, see is the action, and you is the object who is being seen. So now I see you. So if I say I see you, amazed I see you. So now amazed can apply either to I, it can apply to see, or it can apply to you. So of course this is a rough parallel. Sanskrit language and its grammar is quite different. But I'm just giving a simple example over here to illustrate the point that actually this adjective, it can either apply, this Ashcharyavad, the describer, can apply either to the Atma, Ashcharya, Enam. It can apply to Enam, that this soul that we discussed, or it can apply to Kashchit, to the person who is perceiving, or it can apply to the act of perception. So if it applies to the act of perception, then what happens? Pashyati, Ashcharyavat Pashyati. So that means, some people amazingly see the soul. So actually that act of seeing, so once we get the spiritual vision and we see the soul, we start, oh really? Amazingly we see the soul. Some people amazingly hear about the soul. Some people amazingly speak about the soul. So when we speak about the soul, actually all of us know that, theoretically all of us know I am not the body, I am the soul. But most of the time we act at the level of the body. But when we speak about it seriously, when we say we give some talk about reasoning and talk about children who have their past life memories and tell their case studies and think seriously about it, then what we know, it goes deeper when we speak about it. Oh, amazing, oh really? Yeah, I am not the body, I am the soul. Some people amazingly speak about the soul. Some people amazingly hear about the soul. Those people who come and hear, I am not the body and the soul. My God, I didn't know about this. Nobody told me about this. What is this? And so that is also amazing, that for a time when we come to know I am not the body and the soul, it's amazing. And some people amazingly don't understand about the soul. That's also amazing. So why do some people not understand about the soul at all? So Prabhupada says that there can be multiple reasons. One is that they just don't know. And after hearing also, if they don't understand, then that's because they're too attached to material things. If they're too attached to material things, then that attachment blinds them. So attachments are binding and blinding. So attachments are what? Binding. We know that's binding. Alcoholic is attached to alcohol. That means the mind is constantly thinking about alcohol. When will I get that? When will I get that? When will I get that? So attachments are binding, and then they are also blinding. So just as alcohol, like once the person is attached to alcohol, doesn't think of anything else. Is caught in the whole thing and is entangled. Or there's a story we know of Bilva Mangal Thakur in his pre-devotional days when he was infatuated by the prostitute, Chintamani. So at that time, the attachment was binding. Although there was a storm, although there was so much misery and trouble, but still, that attachment was like an invisible rope which dragged him to that society woman's place. And then it was binding and it was blinding. Why blinding? Because he just couldn't think about anything else. He saw a corpse and he thought it was a log of wood. He saw a snake and he thought it was a rope. It's blinding. Now, of course, in this case, he did not meet with any casualty, but otherwise, people can meet with casualties. So for example, if a person becomes drunk and a drunken person drives a vehicle, then what happens? When there's a drunken driver, then the attachment is binding. So the person, because that person is drunk, so can't resist the drink. And after the person drinks and then drives, the attachment is blinding. The person just can't see. They're drunk and maybe it rams into somebody and kills that person. So attachment is binding and blinding. So that's why people can't see. Yatvapienam vedana kaschit. People don't understand at all. So to the extent now, as devotees, we have to hear about from scripture, but along with hearing from scripture, we also have to work on our material attachments. To the extent we give up our material attachments, to that extent we'll be understanding the spiritual reality. Let's move forward. So now, after talking about, in summary about the Atma Gyan, Krishna now talks about summary, the conclusion from the Atma Gyan. So he says, Dehi nityam avadhyoyam, Dehi sarvasva bharata, Tasmat sarvani bhutani, Natvam shochitum arhasi. So Dehi nityam avadhyoyam. So Dehi, this person in the body, is Nitya. And that person is avadhyo, cannot be destroyed. Ayam, this Atma, this Dehi is avadhya, is vadha is destruction, killing. Avadhyo is that is indestructible. Dehe sarvasya bharata. And it is not, Dehe sarvasya bharata means all souls are indestructible. It is not that only some special souls are indestructible. And nowadays people often, whenever they want to learn something, people Google on the internet. Now, of course, if you know and the sources of knowledge, devotees also have many websites, and if the sources of knowledge are reliable, we can use them. But sometimes people Google and then anybody can put anything. So there are so many websites which can tell, which promise people how to determine your next reincarnation. Do this, and then you come on with what to do. Then okay, the special book is there. Pay $500, pay $5,000 for it. How to know your future life, how to determine your future life, how to determine, so things like this. Actually, or these people make it seem as if reincarnation is something special which happens to only selected few. So only if you read this book and you apply what is taught, then you will reincarnate. Otherwise, you'll be annihilated. It's a silly idea. Sarvasva Bharata. Actually, all souls are indestructible. Not only specific souls. For example, in some religions where the knowledge of the soul is not so clear. So what they have the idea is that there are different kinds of souls. And human souls are eternal, but animal souls and plant souls are not eternal. So animals can be eaten. So they have some ideas like that. But they hear Sarvasva Bharata. All souls are eternal. Tasmat sarvani bhutani. Natvam shochitum arhasi. So this is the whole point of this is Arjuna, do not lament, do not lament. So do not let compassion be restricted to the bodily platform, and based on that ignorant level, don't let yourself become deluded. So natvam shochitum arhasi. Therefore, Arjuna, you do not, it's not worthy of you to lament. Tasmat sarvani, do not lament for anyone, neither for your enemies, nor for your own people on your own side. Don't lament for anyone. So this is the first section of the Bhagavad Gita in terms of Krishna's instructions to Arjuna. So Krishna from 2.11 to 2.30 has described Arjuna, do not lament. Because the soul is indestructible, fight. So after describing this, now Krishna takes the discussion to a next level, to a higher level. What is that level? In this level, Krishna describes, if I know that I am this, not the body, I am the soul, okay, I understand. But how do I act in life? Sometimes people say that sometimes our life is considered, this material existence considered to be an illusion. It's temporary, it's transitory. Okay, fine, it's temporary, transitory. But then how am I supposed to live? How do I come out of this illusion? It's not that, okay, today I hear I'm not the body and the soul, tomorrow I stop acting at the body platform entirely. Well, I can try to avoid acting at the body platform, but still I have to live in the material world as long as I have this body. Only at the end I will become liberated. So how do I go about doing this? So for that, one needs to work carefully. One needs to work systematically. So how do we work systematically? That means we need to move forward and think that what is the way by which I can rise out of the body conception. So the first in that is Karma Kanda. Karma Kanda means, Arjuna, you are indestructible, therefore you should fight, do your duty and attain victory, then attain glory. So here by acting at the Karmakanda level. Karmakanda is provides material enjoyment, but it is a dharmic framework. It leads to gradual elevation. So the section from 31 to 38 is answering Arjuna's second argument. Our second argument was enjoyment. I will not be able to enjoy if I don't. If I fight and kill my relatives, I won't be able to enjoy. So Krishna says, no, if you don't fight, you will not be able to enjoy. That's what Krishna describes in 2.31 to 38. So let's start. Now, Swadharmam api cha aveksha navikampitum arhasi dharmyad shreyonya kshatriyasya na vidyate. So Swadharmam api cha aveksha. Aveksha means thinking about, perceiving. Swadharmam api cha aveksha. If you consider your specific dharma, then what will we find? Swadharmam, your specific swadharma. So, Brahmana is swadharma, Kshatriya is swadharma. If you think about it, na vikampitum arhasi. Kampa means trembling. So, there is no need for you to hesitate, Arjuna. There is no need for you to do kampan. Na vikampitum arhasi. So, this kampan is not just physical, it is also, it is not just external kampan. Arjuna was saying that I am trembling. Siddhanti mama gatrani. Mukham cha parishushidve patuscha sharire me. Yes, my limbs are quivering. My body is trembling. He said that. But that external trembling was because of an internal weakness. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, there is no need for you to tremble like this. Navikampitum arhasi, because of internal indecision. So you have no reason, if you consider your swadharma, to do kampan. Why? Dharmyad yuddha shreyonyad. So Dharmyad yuddha, from the point of view dharma yuddha, kshatriyasya na vidyate, there is no greater shreya, there is no greater glory for a kshatriya than to fight a righteous war. So in 2.7, Arjuna had surrendered and had asked, what is shreya? What is my long-term good? And Krishna is answering here. Now Krishna will also talk about multiple levels of shreya. But here he says, for a kshatriya, the shreya, there can be no higher good than the righteous war, than dharma yuddha. Kshatriyasya na vidyate. So now all of us in our current life, we have two sets of duties. There is material duty and there is spiritual duty. So the swadharma can refer to the material duty. The material duty is the process of Varanashram. So that may be Brahman, Kshatriya, or Shudra. Or we have our material duties, we have a duty to our parents, we have a duty towards our family members. So important duties, material duty is there. And a spiritual duty is our sadhana bhakti. So our process of spirituality, our process of yoga, our process of sadhana, by which we realize our spiritual nature. So we have both these duties, and both these duties need to be done harmoniously. Here Krishna is talking to Arjuna in terms of his swadharma, in terms of his material duty. Kshatriya has two particular duty. And what is that Kshatriya's duty? It is actually to fight in a righteous war. So Srila Prabhupada explains this. Prabhupada quotes a verse from the scriptures, and he says that actually for a Kshatriya to die in a battlefield, and for a Brahmana to perform yajna, for a sannyasi to give the body, to lay down the body at the end of the sannyas, all these are very auspicious. So of course here Prabhupada quotes two specific things, a Kshatriya and a Brahmana. So when a Brahmana leaves the body, Brahmana does some yajna, in which even if there was a Brahmana does some faulty things like animal sacrifice, still the Brahmana will be elevated, because the Brahmana is following the path of dharma. And Kshatriya also, even though Kshatriya has to kill in the course of a dharmic battle, Kshatriya will be elevated. So now in the scriptures there are references to animal sacrifice. Now the important point in the animal sacrifice that Srila Prabhupada always explains, based on the way Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained to Chand Kazi during their talks, as I described in Chaitanya Charitamrita chapter 16 of the Adhilila. Basically the point was that there was a conflict, there was a tug of war, that the principle of ahimsa is there in the Vedic scriptures. At the same time, in the yajnas involve certain activities, certain rituals. They involve one of the rituals is animal sacrifice. So the animals may be killed in various ways. So sometimes by mantras the animals are killed, just chanting mantra and the live animal falls dead. Sometimes the animals are killed by attack, by killing them, by using physical weapons. Mm. But whichever way they are killed, the important point is that if they are killed properly, then those animals get elevated. They get a higher body because they have died in the righteous dharmic context. Now, beyond that, there was always an inclination from Manusmriti onwards to avoid animal sacrifices entirely. So, for example, Madhacharya, Ramanujacharya, when they talk about these sacrifices, they say that actually these sacrifices are given for those who are addicted to meat eating. And those who do not want to do sacrifices, they can use other things. For example, instead of sacrificing an animal, a living animal, one can make a clay replica of an animal. So one can take atta and make a clay replica. Not clay means mud, but one can have some other replica made of flour or grains, and one can cut that and offer that during the sacrifice also. Or for example, it is said that now for the Kali, it is said that she likes blood, and that's why goats are slaughtered over there in some of the temples of Kali. Now she doesn't like blood. She is a Vaishnavi. Vaishnavi Janamohini, Bhagavatam says. Durga she's Vaishnavi, and Kali is basically her expansion. She's Durga manifesting in a slightly more ugra tamasic form. So now so it is widely accepted in the tradition today that the goddess offer sacrifice because she likes blood, but actually not she likes blood. It is the people who like to eat flesh and things like that. So then she accepts that. But those who want to avoid it, it is told for them that you can actually give something red to her. So you can give red flowers to her. So that's why in the worship of the goddess, red flowers are given. And red color is there of blood and red color is there of flowers. So in general, the acharyas do not directly reject certain things if they are given in the Vedas, but they contextualize them. So Krishna, for example, here says, later on he will say in the second chapter that Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Bhava Arjuna. And he says, Arjuna, go beyond the three modes. He will say in 2.45, because the Vedas talk about the three modes. But still, Krishna never rejects Vedic authority. He accepts Vedic authority and then tells Arjuna to rise beyond that to transcendental level. So similarly, the point is that the acharyas, even if there are certain statements in the Vedas which seem a little difficult to comprehend, which seem controversial, then the acharyas explain to us how within the context they are to be understood. So for people who are attached to meat eating and for them to rise upwards gradually, animal sacrifices are recommended. But for those who have risen to a higher level of consciousness, there is no need for animal sacrifices. And that's why that is not talked about. So the point here is, whoever is the person who does the prescribed duty, that person gets elevated. So Kshatriyas also, yes, Kshatriyas, if they fight in righteous war and they die, they will get elevated. But that doesn't mean Kshatriyas have to provoke war for the sake of getting elevated. We see the Pandavas, they tried everything possible to avoid the war. The Pandavas sent messengers, and finally Krishna himself went. And Krishna brought the whole kingdom was the Pandavas actually, because it was Pandus, and after that it had come to Pandavas. They never asked for the whole kingdom. They said only our rightful half, and the half which they had got was also actually very desolate. But they had got Khandaprastha, like a forest. But they had arranged to make it Indraprastha by the mercy of Krishna. But then even when they did not demand for the part of the kingdom that was theirs and which they had only developed, they said, just give 5 villages, we did not accept that also. So this sort of glorification of death or glorification of dying in a war field, it is not a license for indiscriminate violence. If we look at the full cultural context, we'll see that violence is never the first option for resolving difficulties or conflicts. Violence is the last option. And these kind of statements which are there in the scriptures, glorifying a Kshatriya who lays down the body in a war field attains Swarga. These statements are primarily meant to encourage people or to inspire people so that they don't flinch while fighting on the behalf of Dharma. That means when they understand, yes, even if I have to die, it doesn't matter. I will attain heaven by fighting. So that is to inspire people to stick to Dharma. The purpose of this is not to condone or recommend violence. So Krishna is telling that for a Kshatriya actually it is very fortunate to get a human, to get uh, a dharmic war. So Prabhupada writes the principle over here. Discharging one's specific duties within Varnashram is always auspicious. So now let's move forward to the next verse. यदृच्छया चोपपन्नं स्वर्गद्वारमपावृतं सुखिनः क्षत्रिया पार्थ लभन्ते युद्धमिदृशम्. So yadruchaya chopapannam. So apavannam. Upapannam means is arrived at. Yadruchaya. Yadruchaya means by its own arrangement, by the course of nature. So if by the arrangement of nature, if the war has appeared, then that war actually opens the doors for heaven. Swargadwaram apavritam. That apavritam. It opens the doors to heaven. Sukhina, Kshatriya, Partha. So, oh Partha, oh Arjuna, those Kshatriyas are very happy because Labhante Yuddhamidrusham. So, all of them want to attain heaven. So, when they want to attain heaven, at that time, how will they attain heaven? Actually, they will attain it only when they lead a life of dharma and punya, and after that there is a process of gradual detachment, and eventually they'll attain heaven. But if they live in such a way that eventually that they get a opportunity to fight in dharmic war and they die over there, then they will get heaven. So in a sense, the dharmic war is an opportunity for heaven. Dharmic war is an opportunity where the doors to heaven are opened. So Krishna is saying the Kshatriya should be happy. So you're getting a glorious destination. You should be happy. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, do not lament. Why are you hesitating to fight? Now we may wonder, why is Krishna glorifying Swarga over here? Actually, we say that we should not go to Swarga. In fact, the devotees feel that even Mukti, Kaivalya is also insignificant. So, Akasha Pushpa. Prabodhan Saraswati in a famous verse says that actually, as compared to the joy of devotional remembrance of Krishna, everything else is insignificant. The heavenly pleasures are like Akasha Pushpa. And then even the happiness of liberation is like hell. Kaivalyam narakayate Durdashpura Akasha Pushpa. It's a long verse. I won't go to that right now. But so the important point is, we know from our philosophy that spiritual happiness is the topmost. Then Vaikuntha or Goloka, basically spiritual world, is what is the aspiration. Then why is Krishna glorifying Swarga over here? Because Krishna is taking knowledge slowly, step by step. So right now he has not talked about the concept of liberation. He is talking, okay, even if one wants Swarga, even if you want material enjoyment, Krishna is here responding to Arjuna's question that how will I enjoy without my relatives? Okay? If enjoyment is what you want, and he's not changing the definition of enjoyment for Arjuna, he's not saying, oh, material enjoyment is false, actually you should enjoy spiritually. No, he's not come to that level. Even if you want material enjoyment, still, what is it? Actually get material enjoyment by practicing dharma. So, the Mahabharata, of which Bhagavad Gita is a part, largely focuses on karma kanda. Means do dharma, by which one can get artha and kama. And of course, bhakti, moksha, prema, that is talked about. And that is definitely there. But that is to be seen can be seen when we see it through the vision of the acharyas. Now, moving forward. So Prabhupada quotes this verse, the Kshatriya is our person who is protect the dharma. So Parashar Shruti says this. क्षत्रियो हीर प्रजा रक्षण शास्त्र प्राणी प्रदंडयन निर्जित्य पर सैन्यादि क्षितिम धर्मेण पालयेत. So what is the duty of the Kshatriya? Praja Rakshan. That is supposed to protect the Praja. And Prabhupada always says Praja doesn't mean only human beings. It means all living beings who are there in the kingdom. We know the story then Lord Ram and a dog came, a cow came. We have stories of Maharaj, Lord Ram or Maharaj Shibi or Maharaj Rantidev. Anybody who comes, they consider their Praja. And then for the Praja Rakshan, what they do? Shastra Pani, they have to lift up weapons. And Pradandayan, they have to give punishment. Nirjitya Parasainyadi, they have to conquer over the enemy soldiers. Kshitim Dharmena Palayet. In this way, Kshiti, the earth, the land which they have got, Dharmena Palayet, they have to protect according to Dharma. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, by this you will attain auspiciousness, you will attain heaven. Now Krishna will tell, okay, if you don't do this, what will happen? Atachvetamimam dharmyam sangramam na karishyasi tasvadharmam kirtim cha hitva papamavapsyasi. Atachettamimam dharmyam. If, however, imam dharmya, this dharma you do not follow, sangramam na karishyasi, if you do not follow your dharma and you do not do sangram, sangram is fighting, then what will happen? Tatah swadharmam kirtim cha hitva. You will lose your dharma and you lose your kirti. Because not doing your dharma, that is inauspicious. So you lose your dharma, you will be doing dereliction of duty. You lose your fame. And then hitva, papam avapsyasi. How papam? Actually doing our dharma is our duty. If we fail in our dharma, that brings papa. If a doctor doesn't treat a patient, then that is a crime by negligence. The doctor knows how to cure a patient and the patient is there, the doctor doesn't do anything. And that is the crime of negligence. So even if Kshatriya doesn't protect the citizens, that the Kshatriya is considered a criminal because of being negligent. So similarly here, Krishna is telling that actually if you don't do your dharma, then papam avapsyasi, you will lose your dharma, so you will not get the opportunity to do punya, but you will do papa. And then in the next verses, Krishna will talk about kirti. So remember, Krishna is not yet taken things directly to the spiritual level. So now he will talk a lot about kirti. Krishna is not talking here at the level of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Manina Manadena. He's talking about Kshatriyas in their language. You lose your fame also. So how you lose your fame? He talks about next verses. Akirtim chapi bhutani kathaishyanti te avyayam sambhavitasya cha kirtir maranadatirichyate. So akirtim cha api bhutani. Akirti, the word was had come in the previous verse. So kirti is fame, akirti is infamy. Akirti cha api bhutani kathaishyante avyayam. So people will speak about it avyaya for a long, long time to come. Actually, in this world, infamy stays on for a long time because many people like to gossip. And people like, oh, you know what that person did? You know what that person did? You know what that person did? People speak about it and it just goes on and on. So now Krishna is by no means condoning or recommending this. Krishna is just reporting a universal pattern of human behavior. This is how it is. So if somebody acts in a particular way, an ignoble way, people talk about it. Now actually, there is in the media also there is paparazzi. Paparazzi is like the people who, among those newspaper journalists or reporters, there is those who are interested in cheap popularity. Cheap popularity means one film star slaps another film star, and there are big photos of that. And is this person having an affair with that person? That person was seen with that person, and that person is doing this, and this all just gossip and scandal. So what happens is people like to hear about this because people's consciousness is low and there is a whole media that is catering to it. So of course now it has gone international proportions because of internet and because of technology, but this is a general tendency. So Krishna is telling that Arjuna, if you act in an ignoble way, people will speak about your infamy. Kathaishyanti te avyayam. So as devotees, we are not concerned about reputation for our own sake, but we are concerned about reputation for the sake of sharing Krishna's message. Now, for example, if a preacher gets a bad reputation, if a preacher's character is flawed, or even the preacher's character is not flawed, but somehow that preacher gets a bad reputation, then the preacher's capacity to share that message gets impeded. Because generally, when can any teacher share a message, especially a message that involves spiritual wisdom and personal transformation? Then when people trust the person. But whenever there is gossip, then as soon as we see that person, we think, oh, I heard that about that person. Has that person done something like this? So it's like a cancer that stays in the mind. And it just erodes our faith away. So now, it's from our point of view, we should always try to avoid hearing gossip. But it's a universal human nature that people will gossip. It's of course not a recommended nature, it's our lower nature. Just like it's the nature to become lusty, it's nature to become lusty. So like greedy. Similarly, it's like nature, it's a conditioned nature to become gossipy. That has to be avoided. That has to be curtailed. But it is there. People are going to do these things. So what do you do about it? So Krishna says that this is how people will talk about you. And then Sambhavatsya cha kirtir maranaitirichyate. So from the preacher's point of view also it's important that preacher not act in a way that will bring infamy. So Krishna has said that for a person who has been honored, dishonor is worse than death. Actually, sticks can break bones, but words can break hearts. Harsh words that are spoken, they can inflict wounds that go deeper, much, much, much deeper than the physical wounds. Most of the time when people commit, say, suicide, it's not so common that people commit suicide because of physical pain. But when there is emotional pain, when somebody whom we love and trust, that person has spoken harsh words, it can be enormously painful. It can be worse than death. So dishonor is worse than death. So of course, now when we're talking about dishonor, we're not just talking about a person speaking harsh words about us, but a person speaking harsh words and those harsh words going around to the world for everyone. A person speaking, whether it is true or false, if the person speaks to everyone, oh, this person did this dishonor becomes so difficult to deal with. So it's impossible. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, this is what going to happen to you. Now Arjuna may say, but no, why should people why should I get in infamy? Because I am not doing anything for my selfish purposes. I am doing for the sake of virtue. I don't want to kill my elders. And for the sake of righteousness, I am not doing anything wrong. He says, don't. People will not think like this. What will people think? That's what he describes in the next verse. भयाद्रणादुपरितं मंस्यन्ते त्वां महारथः येषां च्युतं बहुमतो भूत्वा यास्यसि लाघवम्. So bhayad ranad uparatam. That ranad uparatam, you ran away. Why? Because of bhaya. You are there in the battlefield and when you chickened out. Bhayad ranad uparatam. Mamsyante tvam maharathaha. All the great people, all these great warriors are tvam maharatha. Mamsyante. They will what will say? They will say, oh, you ran out of cowardice. Yesham chutam bahumato. And those who are bahumato, they thought you are a very great person. Bhutva yasyasi laghavam. They'll say, hey, you're nothing great. You're an ordinary person. Bhutva yasyasi laghavam. So they will consider you insignificant. So actually our actions are seen by people. Our motivations are not seen by people. And people's perceptions are shaped not by our motivations but by our actions. Now, if people come to know us closely, then maybe they can see beyond our actions to our motivations also. But people primarily see our actions. And based on their level of consciousness, they will ascribe, okay, when would I have done like this? Okay, if somebody is right there on the battlefield, and then at that time the person says, I will not fight. I'll use the battlefield. When would I do that? Or when would other people I know do that? When they are afraid. So that way, that's what happens to most people. And we have to remember that. So there are three things over. There's perceptions, there are actions, and there are motivations. So our motivations are not known to the world. Our actions are seen by the world, and based on that, people have perceptions. So therefore, our actions have to be such that they don't lead to wrong perceptions. That's why the actions have to be exemplary. And sometimes we have to act in some unusual ways. Then we have to clear the air and explain why we are acting in particular ways. Then it doesn't lead to false perceptions. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that people are not going to look at your heart. People are going to look at you externally, your actions. And a warrior left on the battlefield. That means that this person must have chickened out, must have become a coward. So I said in this way they will consider that you are insignificant. Bhutva yasyasi laghavam. They'll consider you to be insignificant. So actually, this is a common human tendency. This is called the attributional error. Attributional error means attribution means to attribute, say to ascribe a cause to determine. So whenever there are actions, we attribute motivations for those actions. So for example, if we see somebody is eating a lot, merely why is this person eating a lot? This person is a glutton. This person is greedy. So now, generally speaking, if somebody is sleeping for a long time, we say this person is lazy. This person is. So like that, what we do is we see actions and we ascribe motivations to that. And in that, we do usually an attributional error. What is that? We give ourselves the benefit of doubt. Means if I overeat, I was hungry. If that person overeat, that person is greedy. So how the same action, when I do it, it's hunger. And if somebody else does it, it's greed. If I oversleep, I was tired. If that person overfeeds, that person lazy. So how does it happen? That is a human tendency. So actually we have to avoid this, we have to learn to avoid this attribution error. And we shouldn't attribute motivations to actions without understanding circumstances. Otherwise we can lead to a lot of misunderstandings. Once I had gone, I was in a temple, and then I had just come for prasadam, and then I had come a little late. That day it was a feast, but most of the feast was over. So some last things were remaining. So I was feeling a little bad. The sweet had already got over. So I thought that, okay, I'll take whatever is available. And there was one senior devotee who was sitting opposite, and I saw that in his plate the sweet had been there and sweet had got over. And he started asking, sweet egg, is there some sweet? Is there some sweet? And then he asked one person, and then it said, no, Prabhu, sweet is over. Then he started asking another server, is sweet there? And third server, and practically asking everyone, is sweet there? Now he was a senior devotee, so people started getting a little concerned. And then finally, I was thinking, what is this person? Why they already had one helping of sweet? Why is they asking for a second helping? And finally, one devotee came along. That devotee was just like when people are serving prasadam, then they make plates for themselves so that they'll take later. So this devotee was serving, he had made plate for himself. So he brought his own plate and he said, in that there was sweet. And he started serving. And when he was about to serve that, he said, no, I don't want it. And that devotee pointed to me. And he said, he has not got sweet, give to him. So I was so shocked. So that devotee did not want sweet for himself, he wanted it for me. He was so sensitive, he saw that I have come, I didn't get sweet. So he said, please give him sweet. So now afterwards I was thinking that say when I ask for sweet, my action is, because I have a tongue which wants delicious things. So when I see an action, then automatically the motivation is, okay, I want to taste the sweet. That's why I think it's for me. But, so based on my level of consciousness, I perceive everyone else. And based on actions, I attribute motivation. I was thinking, why is this person so greedy? But there was no greed involved at all. There was actually a concern for somebody else involved. That's why we have to be careful that when we see actions, we don't attribute motivations by default. We have to actually investigate and try to understand the circumstance. Then we can understand properly. So as devotees, we should be careful. But people in the world are not generally going to be careful like this. So as much as possible, we should also try to behave in such a way that things don't come to a situation of misunderstanding. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in Chaitanya Charitamrita said that Sannyasi Alpachidra Sarvaloka Gai. It said that just as on a white cloth, If there's one dark spot, it shines. It doesn't shine, it looks ugly, but it's basically noticeable for everyone. Similarly, if there's some small flaw in a sannyasi or in a person who is in a position of leadership, everybody sees that. So we have to work both ways. If we are as devotees representing Krishna, then we should not behave in ways that will lead to attributional error among people. That means we should not act in ways which will raise questions and will make people lead to wrong perception. On the other hand, when we are observing others acting in questionable ways, we shouldn't by default assume that there are ulterior motives involved over here. That we should be open to actually find out what it is. Now Krishna will describe further. Hato va prapsisi swargam jitva va vokshase mahim tasmaduttishta kaunteya yuddhaya kritanishchaya. So now Krishna is telling in this way, Hato va prapsisi swargam. If you die, Hato, if you are killed over here, you will attain swarga, prapsisi swargam. Jitva va, if you win, bhokshase mahim, you will enjoy the whole world. So tasmad yuddhyasya uttishta kaunteya. Therefore Arjuna writes, Yuddhaya kritanishchaya. With determination, fight. So here we see Krishna's brilliant reasoning that the situation that Arjuna had thought of lose-lose, Krishna has shown how it is win-win. That if you die, still you will attain heaven, that's victory for you. And if you win, you get earth over here, that's also victory for you. So where is the loss for you? So if Arjuna has any hesitation about why to fight or why not to fight, Krishna removes that hesitation and tells, fight. With kritanishchaya, with determination, Arjuna fight. So this is the second level argumentation, karma kanda. If you enjoyment is your concern, you will best enjoy by fighting, by doing your duty. Therefore Arjuna, fight. So next verse onwards, Krishna will talk about the next lesson, which we will discuss in the next class. Thank you. Hare Krishna.